What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Ask Paul. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host. And if it's your first time listening to the podcast, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me. We have literally dozens of podcasts that you can listen to, but you could go over to electricianlive.com, which is our Electrician Live broadcast network, and you can listen to literally dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of our podcasts on all different types of subjects. So check that out over at electricianlive.com. Now, if you just want to listen to the Let's Ask Paul podcast, where we answer the questions you, the public, have about the National Electrical Code, then all you got to do is go to paulabernathy.com. Of course, you can get these podcasts as well over on electricianlive.com as well. So there's just multiple ways for you to be able to listen. But also remember that you can listen to all these on your popular streaming platforms like Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can listen to our show. Just search for Master the NEC. Search for Let's Ask Paul. All those type of things. In fact, even on your various Alexa devices, you can actually say, play National Electrical Code podcast, and we'll actually show up on that podcast to play on there. And, I do that when I'm in the shower. I like to listen to podcasts on my Alexa devices, so it's pretty cool. All right, so if you don't know how the format goes here on Let's Ask Paul, when you have an electrical question, then what you do is you simply go to paulabernathy.com, you fill in your name, fill in your email address, and you just put in your question. You click that submit button, and it comes directly to me, and I answer your question, either in a podcast or directly via email. Now, you also can go there and listen to all the podcasts on the paulabernathy.com website as well, if that's what you choose. If, for example, you only like the Let's Ask Paul series, then you can go there and listen to all of them there. I think it's almost 60 episodes now. I don't know where we're at, but there's quite a few of the episodes, all different topics. So make sure you scroll through there and pick one that you like, and make sure you do me a favor. If you see something you like, you can always donate there to say thank you, or better yet, you can share our podcast with somebody else. Get other people listening to it, and maybe they have questions they want to submit. Okay. Anyway, it's a free service that is brought to you by Electrical Code Academy Incorporated, a Texas corporation. I am the CEO and president of that corporation, and we would appreciate it also if you're interested in learning the National Electrical Code that you check out our website at electricalcodeacademy.net, but you can also get there at masterthenec.com as well, and that's what most people know me from. Okay. Today, we're going to answer a question, and I'm going to give you a heads up right now. This is a long question, and it's got many elements to it, so it's probably only going to be one answered in this episode today, because there is just so many elements in here. And so I have already responded back to this individual via email because of the length of this and the detail, but I'm going to do my best to try to cover some of those high points right here on the podcast, so other people can learn from it. All right, so let me go on and get into this one here. It was submitted, again, through the portal over at Ask Paul. It says, "Hey, Paul, I really love your podcast. I have taken my LLE twice now, and I've failed both times by 5 questions and then 3 questions respectively." Okay, let me stop right there first. I usually tell people that when you say by 5, they're trying to get to that magic number that passes. Reality is you probably missed it by 20 plus questions. So there is room for you to improve that. So don't give up. 5 questions, 3 questions, that's nothing. Okay. Because you've got at least 20 plus questions that you can improve your score on. So don't give up. I know you've done it twice. The biggest problem with people is they don't have a way to really study. And so this individual is not in our Fast Tracks program, obviously. And so you can flip through the book, but you don't know what to study. So our Fast Track program is designed to systematically walk you through the beginning of the code, talk a little bit about the history, move you into boxes, box fill, pull calculations, walk you through conductor sizing, it just works you through the program. And so by the time you finish, and when you do the competency reviews at the end of each unit, you have that extra level of assurance that by the time you go take this exam, you are ready. And that's why I invented the Fast Trax program, which, by the way, is a federally protected trademark. Absolutely. I've got quite a few of those now. Starting to get a collection of trademarks. All right, let me go on and get into this question here a little more. He said, I found out that with PSI, I can go do a review. Okay, kind of let you see how you did, kind of go over it. Okay, encourage it, especially if you're going to study yourself and you're not going to use a structured program like ours, then you most certainly want to go and do this review and see how you did. So he did it, I guess. He says, I just got out of my review and was wondering if you could help me understand why on the kitchen countertop receptacle spacing has to be 4 feet instead of 2 feet. Is this something from the 2020 code that changed from the 2017 code? Okay, so that's the first question. All right. So the first thing that we'll talk about is it's a spacing requirement. And it's one of those ones, and I'll tell you, this is a good testimony to people out there who use our program, our Fast Trax program, because if you ask any of our Fast Trax students, they will tell you point blank, this is one of the questions that are in our program. So this should show you that a lot of the exams out there have questions that are in our program. So this just should show you that. Now, what he's talking about is if you got the National Electrical Code, and of course he's talking 2020. No, this was not a change. But in the National Electrical Code, obviously we're dealing with receptacle outlet placement, and we're in 210.52. But we're dealing with the placement where? We're dealing with the placements that have to do in the kitchen, and most notably serving the countertop, right? So when it comes to that spacing, you want to be in 210.52C, and most notably, we're looking at number 1. So C1 has to do with wall spacing. Now, here's what the code says, and I'll show you why the question was written the way it is. It says, receptacle outlets shall be installed so that no point along the wall line is more than 24 inches measured horizontally from a receptacle outlet in that space. Okay, so answering that question, 4 feet would be the answer because the code says you can't be more than 24 inches, which is 2 feet, from a receptacle outlet on that wall space, that countertop wall space. So if I have 2 receptacles serving the countertop, the maximum distance apart would be 4 feet. Why? Because anywhere on that wall between those 2 receptacle outlets, if I touch it, I'm going to be within 2 feet, as the code says, of a receptacle outlet. So if I go directly in the middle between those 2 receptacle outlets and I touch that wall, am I not within 2 feet of a receptacle going to the left or the right? Absolutely. Now, if I put those receptacles 5 feet apart and I went to the middle of the wall, I'm not within 2 feet of either of them. You get me? And if I put it more to the left, I might be within 2 feet of the one on the left, but I am more than 3 feet from the one on the right. So it's not a trick question. It's just the way it's asked, right? So the maximum distance between receptacle outlets that serve the countertop is 4 feet, so that no point along the wall line is more than 2 feet from a receptacle or 24 inches from a receptacle, okay? So for reference for you, 210.52 C1 is where you want to be to answer that question, okay? So hopefully that answered that question for you. And let's go on to the next one because there's a bunch of them in here. The next one says, another couple of questions, if I can remember all of them. One of them has to do with feeder busways, and it was rated 1100 amps, and the overcurrent protection was 1000 amps. So the answer, 1000 amps was the answer, but I was wondering how you could be able to find this in the code book, as it seems when I started trying to find it, it sent me on a wild goose chase between overcurrent protection in 240, branch circuit calculation in 220, and there might be something in 490. Okay. All right. So I want to answer this question because, again, we want to make sure that we've addressed this for everybody. Okay. So in this question here, since the ampacity was over 800 amps, and we're talking about 240.4b, so you can't use the next size up rule. So we have to jump to 240.4c. So now, since that busway was rated 1100 amps, the overcurrent protection has to protect it. So I can't exceed the 1100 because the next overcurrent device would be what? Be 1200. So what we have to do is we have to go down and we would have to choose a 1000 amp overcurrent device. Now, also in 368.17, which is dealing with bus ways, it reminds us that the overcurrent protection has to be in accordance with the rating of the busway. And since there's no 1100 amp overcurrent device available in 240.6a, you logically have to drop down to the 1000 amps. And that's probably what the question is dealing with that. So that's hopefully answers that question for that one. Okay. All right. The next question that he has, furthermore, another question. I remember, now I should say this. When people get out of exams, I usually tell you, especially if you fail, and it's hard to put the two together, but you should try to remember as much of the questions as you can. Okay. Now remember, if you're going to do a review and you're looking at the ones you got wrong, it's okay to find the answers, but there is probably 100% probability here that you're not going to get these same questions again. I mean, that would be kind of pointless for the exam process, right? But you do get to see where your mental picture was when you're doing it. And so it's always good to review. But again, at the end of the day, remember, you're probably not going to get these questions again. So I'm answering them for you so that you can have clarity. But again, you still need to study, and you still need a focused way to study. Okay. All right. So the next question he's got, again, I told you it's a long email. The next, or a long submittal, I should say. The next one says, furthermore, another question I remember getting both times had to do with lightning strikes in industrial locations and the number of ground rods required, or something similar. Both times I answered either 2 rods or 4 rods, but according to the review, the answer was 3 rods. It says, if you are curious as to where I start my search every time, it is going to be in the index looking under lightning surge arresters and lightning surge protection. So that tells me he's watched some of my videos, especially ones where we dissect the question. It says trouble finding, okay, that's that end of that question. All right. So again, one of the issues with that is, again, the question is only good as the information it's given. Okay. Well, again, helping me find this, I really need to know the valuable details. They really weren't specific. It's more sounds like an NFPA 780, which is a standard for installation of lightning protection system questions, than actually something to do with the National Electrical Code, because the National Electrical Code is really not going to get into the number that are necessary for lightning strikes or things like that. That's a different standard. So I really, I can't give you any insight on that one. I apologize. I am not a lightning protection system expert, and there's nowhere in the code that I'm aware of that requires a certain number of lightning strike devices that would be within a different standard. Of course, I could be wrong, and I do my best to answer the question, but I don't believe there's anything in there for that. So can't really help you with that one. But remember, you didn't pass by more than 20 plus, not just the 5. You missed, even if you don't get this one, and chances are you won't get it again, you still should be fine. Don't worry about it. Relax. All right, the next one is another question that I am having trouble finding, is about luminaires, specifically pendant luminaires, if it is to be supported in a Class 1 Division 2 hazardous location with a rigid metal conduit stem. If there was something there about being flexible connector and, quote, if it cannot be attached at 12 inches, what is the minimum it can be attached at? And the answer was 18 inches, but I cannot find that anywhere and talks about the code for luminaires. Okay. Well, obviously in me looking through this, the only reference that I see is Article 501, which is 18 inches to do with seals. When it comes to 18, everything else I see in 501, 130B3 references 12 inches. So sadly, I'm not going to be much help on that one. I believe that if you're talking about seals, we got 18 inches, but I'm talking about supports and stems. I think the answer is 12 inches. So I probably would challenge that question, although somebody out there might know the answer. I don't deal a whole lot in hazardous locations. So in me looking through hazardous locations, I didn't see anything that references anything like your question. So I don't know that you've got the details to the question accurate or not. So there ain't much I can do for that one. Sorry, can't help you with that one either. All right, let's go on to the next one. Dude, I'm not much help today. The next one says, okay, so another fun one had to do with the rating of a range being 20.8 kW and how to calculate it, and the answer ended up being something like 11.4 kW. Okay, we don't know yet, but that's what he said he remembers the answer being. It says, and I was just wondering what the way to calculate that would be. I did find it really fun. I did find this really fun table. 220, he got 20.55, but I'm sure he means 220.55. I just don't understand why there would be anything over 20 or 30 appliances. I digress. But it looks like since it only said for the range in a dwelling unit, I would have to look at the table, follow note 1 and note 4. But again, maybe I was looking in the wrong place entirely and needed to be in 422 appliances. All right, so let me answer this question for you. The reason that table 220.55 is because it's utilized as well when you're doing multiple standard calculation for multiple dwellings. Okay, so when you look at it, you could have many dwelling units. Okay, that have many ranges, and you're going to have the contribution of these ranges to the overall service or feeder load, right? In part 3. And you utilize some of the aspects of part 2 when you're over in part 3, okay? And the one thing about it is that the 220.55 is part of part 3. So that tells you that part 3 is part of the feeder and service load calculations. So the reason you have so many appliances here, these cooking, is because you could have multi-story buildings. If using the standard method, you would be able to apply the demand factors here. Now, most people do the optional method. They don't really do the standard method, but on an exam, you got to know how to do the standard method. So you got to work through it. Now, in an exam question, it might just simply want to know what the demand load is for so many household electric ranges. Maybe it's a 15-story building. It's 15 ranges, and you need to calculate what that contribution would be, right? And so that's why you would use this table. So when you're talking about appliances, this has nothing to do with appliances overall, like in 422, okay? This has to do with household electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, and other household cooking appliances over 1 3/4 kW. That's all this table deals with. Okay? So let me help you out a little bit with this table, because it sounds like you're a little bit confused in how to do these calculations. So first thing you need to realize is table 220.55 tells us that we always have to use column C. Because if you look at the very top of 220.55, the table, in the parentheses near the end, it says column C is to be used in all cases except as otherwise permitted in note 3. Okay? So when we're doing a range calculation, we ultimately, if the ranges, let's just use ranges, by the way, keep it simple. If ranges fall in column A or B, and we always have to do the calculation, whether it's in column A or B, but we always have to compare it to column C. And we get to take whichever is the lesser value. Okay? One of the rare times in the code that we do that. Lesser values get used. Everywhere else, like 220.60, we compare the non-coincident load and take the larger, right? But here, we're permitted to take the lesser of the two, okay? So when you're doing it, and the reason we say that is because if you go down and look at note 3, it says over 1 3/4 through 8 3/4, it says in lieu of the method provided in column C. That in lieu of is telling you, well, you use C because the heading says C, unless you're permitted in note 3. If your ranges or cooking equipment fall within the note 3 parameters, then you can take that one and use it in lieu of C, okay, column C. If that yields a better result, then you can use it, okay? So that's kind of what the in lieu means. All right, so in this case, you've given me some data here. You told me that it was 20.8 kW range, right? So we have to look at the two, and we assume it's just one range. But the problem what you have here is that the range is over 12 kW, right? So you're going to go look at the notes. Now, note number 1 says over 12 kW through 27 ranges, all the same rating. Well, there's only one, so you got to go with the one. You wouldn't use 2 because, again, that one, there is no unequal ratings because it's just one range, right? So you would look at that scenario here. Now, many people would say, well, column C says you just take the 8 kW. Well, the problem with that is it is over 12 kW. So it has to bring in note 1, right? If it was 11 kW, then you could just say the demand for this range is 8 kW because it's one appliance. You just go to the column C for one appliance, one range, let's say, it could be 8 kW. The fact that this is 20.8 means that you have to use the notes. So we use note 1. Now, what does it say in note 1? It says over 12 kW through 27 kW, and obviously this one is over 12, it's 20.8. It says for ranges individually rated more than 12 kW, but not more than 27, and of course we're not more than 27 here. It says the maximum demand in column C, so the value that's in column C for that one range, shall be increased 5% for each additional kilowatt or rating or major fraction thereof by which the rating of the individual range exceeds 12. Okay, so what does all that mean for you? You're taking an exam. So I need to take the 20.8, I need to minus 12 from it because we're going to add 5% for every kilowatt that exceeds 12 or major fraction, so anything 0.5 and greater. That exceeds 12, we have to add 5%. So 20.8 minus 12, that gives me 8.8 kW, right? Well, it's 8.8 kW over 12, and that is 5% increase for each kW over 12. So what is it increasing on? It's increasing on the value in column C for one range, which was 8 kW. So we have to do 8 times 5 to find out how many. Remember, we're going to save the 0.8 for a second. That's the major fraction. Let's make it easy. Let's set that to the side. Or if you want to shortcut it, you could say that it's 8 times 5 is 40. And then you have that 0.8, which is another major fraction. So we add one more 5% onto that, which is 0.5. So ultimately it ends up being 45%. Okay. You get with me now? I hope you get me because you're 8.8 kW over 12. It's 5% for every kW, and there's 8 of them over it, plus the 0.8, which is a major fraction. So that's another 5%. Okay. So that's how you work it. So at this point, it's 45%, but it's 45% of the 8 kW, which is the value in column C. And people sometimes lose sight on that. They don't realize that we're talking about the percentage is based on what the value is in column C. It says that right in the note. So 8 times 0.45 is what? 3.6 kW. So at that 8 kW, 45% of that is increased 3.6. So you add that 3.6 back to the 8 because it said increase the value in column C by 45% now. Okay, which is 5% for every kW over 12 and 5% for any major fraction. Again, I am being redundant, but it's so that you can get this clear. If you don't get it, go back and rewind it. If you think you can say it better and you're out there doing a podcast, then do your podcast and help people stop being a critic. Okay, I'm doing my best here to try to explain it. So you're increasing the 8 kW by 45%, which represents the 5% for every kW over 12 for the value given in your question. And so that would be 8 plus the 3.6 for a total of 11.6 kW. Not the 11.4 that you remember, but it should be 11.6. And I am sure that's the answer that was on your the exam. I'm sure that's what you had, okay? All right, so that's quite a bit in there. And he goes on to say, again, Paul, thank you so much for everything you do. I love listening to your podcast in the background at work on my portable speaker and in the car on the way to and from class or from work. Now, you say to a class. I would hope that your instructor is able to explain these things as well. So if you have any questions about what we talked about, go to your instructor. And if your instructor doesn't know, then you need to have them listen to our podcast. I'm just saying. All right. Says, again, sorry for the word vomit. This is just some of the things rattling around in my brain after doing the review. And I hope you're able to provide a little bit of insight into how to find these answers, as I definitely struggled. Okay. So hopefully we answered these questions. I really couldn't help you much with the STEM one. I don't think there was enough information there. And I can't help you about the ground rods for the lightning strikes. It sounds like that's a 780 in a document and not really. But again, you could be in a state which has other types of documents that are used for your exam. So that's what it could be from. And you spend a lot of time jumping around in the NEC. It might be in there. I'm just not aware of it. So, I mean, where, typically if it was ground rods and it was for a dwelling unit, then it would be 2 unless you can show 25 ohms or less. Then you could do 1. So obviously you answered that question with 2 and they said it was wrong. So it has nothing to do with that. And I don't believe there's anything in there for lightning protection that talks about the number of strikes. Again, that's something that's going to be inherent with another document. So don't know I can help you there. But other than that, remember that not all questions on exams are perfect. They make mistakes too. The good news is you have 20 plus questions that you can improve on. Don't worry so much about the 5 and the 3. Those questions that were on this review that you had for whatever test you did, you're probably not going to get those again. So just refocus, watch the videos. We have a lot of exam prep videos that are out there that aren't part of our paid subscription. They're out there. You got to search for them. If you go to our YouTube channel, there is a playlist, I believe, that has all of those exam prep stuff in there. Hours and hours of it that I still leave up open to the public. All of our new stuff is not. It's in a subscription, but there is still some stuff up there. So give it a shot. And if you're interested and you have trouble the third time, then get in the Fast Tracks program. I can guarantee you it'll make a difference for you. And you'll walk away remembering stuff. Okay? All right, folks. Hopefully that explained it to everybody. So till next time, stay safe. God bless. And if you got your questions and you want to submit them, just go to paulabernathy.com. I'll do my best to answer them for you. Till next time, stay safe.